Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Inspirit AI webinar on college admissions. We're so excited to have you all here with us today. My name is Michelle Joseph, and I'm the lead curriculum manager here at Inspirit. For those of you that don't know already, Inspirit AI is a premier program that introduces high school and middle school students to artificial intelligence through live, online, and in-person courses. Our program is developed and taught by Stanford and MIT alumni and graduate students and aims to inspire students to apply AI for social good. Our students get the opportunity to engage in hands-on research and projects in the field of AI, and our goal is to empower young minds to explore the fascinating world of AI and to provide them with the tools and mentorship they need to thrive in their academic and professional journeys. Today, we're thrilled to have a really special guest with us, Justin Neiman. Justin brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, having served as a former admissions officer at Harvard and assistant dean at Stanford. He holds an MA from Stanford University and a BA from Dartmouth College, and he currently works as a college counselor at Selective Admissions. Justin will be sharing valuable insights on how students can leverage their research experiences, like those gained through Inspirit AI, to strengthen their college applications. He'll cover the importance of research to universities, how to effectively highlight your research in various parts of your application, and so much more. The chat will be open for any questions, and we'll do a Q&A at the end, so feel free to leave anything that you're wondering in there. And without further ado, please welcome me in joining Justin Neiman.
Thank you for that introduction, Michelle, and I'm really excited to be here with everybody today on this Sunday. So yeah, this is the title of the presentation. We are showcasing Inspirit projects in college applications. Have a lot of really good content to share with everyone. I'm going to try to go into as much detail as I can, talk about some big picture themes, and particularly some places that I think are really great opportunities to talk about your research. I know many of you are probably beginning the process to craft your applications this summer. And so I think this is a really timely session to have because this is top of mind for a lot of people. As Michelle mentioned, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to put questions in the chat box now or as we go along. But we'll just jump into things. And Michelle already went over a little bit about my background, but I'm really excited to share my insights from my years working both at Harvard and Stanford and also as an independent college counselor as well. So first and foremost, I thought it would be interesting to just talk about what universities do, what they exist for. And, I've noticed that a lot of students, when they think about universities, they think about them as gateways to future success. And yes, that is obviously something universities, college degrees, graduate degrees open a lot of doors for you. But really at its core, I think it's important to remind ourselves that universities exist to preserve and create knowledge. And when you're thinking about it from that lens, and as you're preparing your applications, like you really want to emphasize why you want to go somewhere where knowledge is seen with such high regard, right? And you want to align yourself well with that philosophy. So first of all, universities, I want to talk about a few things that I think particularly are just irrelevant as we're framing this conversation. So one part of a university existence really is this preservation of knowledge. Universities act as repositories of human knowledge in so many ways. They have huge libraries that contain historical documents, research findings, scholarly works. And by doing all this, this ensures that past knowledge is preserved and accessible to future generations. Many universities have their own museums, have archives with tons of knowledge that is stored. And, so you can really, when you think about it from this lens, it's kind of easy to understand why knowledge really is at the core of a university's philosophy. I have a picture here of Widener Library, which is the largest library on Harvard's campus. Fun fact, there's actually 57 miles of shelf space in total, so a lot of books can be stored. And if you've ever had a chance to visit, you would know there's actually 5 stories of underground book stacks just below in this picture. So in addition to preserving knowledge, universities really exist, in my mind, to also create new knowledge. And that's where research really comes in. Research is really an avenue to create new knowledge. And lastly, universities also exist to train the next generation. particularly training that next generation of scholars and researchers. So if you've noticed, one theme kind of just in this short description is I've said the word research a lot. And really that's because research is so central to the mission of higher education. I pulled two excerpts from some of the mission statements just from two universities that I know we're all very familiar with, but just wanted to put that out there. You know, Yale's mission statement, they say Yale is committed to improving the world today and for future generations through outstanding research and scholarship, education, preservation, and practice. And an excerpt from Princeton's mission statement, Princeton University advances learning through scholarship, research, and teaching of unsurpassed quality. So I bring that up just because I want to center us all in this idea about how important research is, how important this contribution is to the body of human knowledge for universities. And if I could put myself in your shoes, right, where you are trying to make the case for why you should, and you would be an excellent candidate at these outstanding universities, if you can align yourself with what's important to them, you're already in a great place. And that's what I love so much about the types of independent research that you all have been participating in here at Inspirit AI, because it so perfectly aligns with what these mission statements are and really what's important to universities. And so given all that, it's going to be a really important theme to talk about in your applications. And hopefully it's been a really positive experience, something that you're already planning on talking about. So I just want to quickly go over why research is so important to universities. So first and foremost, research is really important for funding and grants. Research activities often attract significant funding from government agencies, private foundations, and industry partners. This funding is really crucial for the financial health of any university and really helps keep things moving and going. Additionally, universities want to attract top quality faculty. They look for professors who are leaders in their fields, and also top faculty are looking for universities that will support their research goals. So it's really a mutual relationship. Strong research also impacts reputation. Rankings highly consider research, and top research is frequently cited in the press. It really establishes a university as a thought leader, as an important hub for innovation and important ideas. And as a result, a lot of positive press can come from research. Additionally, research really enriches the educational experience for all students. Students at many universities will have an opportunity to get involved in research projects in some capacity, whether that's one-on-one, hands-on learning opportunities that can really help develop critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and really promote this deep subject matter expertise. Additionally, research is really important from an innovation and progress perspective. So through research, there have been so many developments of practical applications that have helped society throughout time. There have been many new inventions, technologies, and advancements that have been born on university campuses, everything from the internet to Google to vaccines and science inventions and advancements. The list really goes on and on. So I think it's easy to lose sight of what universities really are there for. But ultimately, if we can reframe our perspective to remind us about the importance of scholarly work, of research, of advancing knowledge, and make this kind of a theme that is important to you and stands out in your application, I think we're going to be in a good place to begin with. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think independent research, like many of the projects that you all have done or are currently participating in, are so valuable, and why what they demonstrate to a university admissions committee. So first and foremost, if you do independent research, that really indicates that you are a scholar. You have scholarly interests, you crave knowledge, and wanted to learn more about something. Intellectual curiosity. It also shows that you're really curious about the world. This is really a buzzword in admissions, right? And it really aligns with the type of work that you would do as an independent researcher. Additionally, doing independent research helps demonstrate that you have critical thinking and analysis skills. In order to do an independent research project, an individual must, really dive into a topic that's interesting to them. They have to formulate a research question, design a methodology to answer it. This whole process really showcases your ability to think independently, solve problems creatively, and overcome challenges, without constant guidance, but really that you're leading independently. And lastly, another thing that I think is so great about independent research and why I think it's so valuable to incorporate into your application in some shape or form is for many of you, you have had to figure out how to consolidate and present all your research into a research paper, into a presentation, into an abstract. This is a really valuable skill that I think is highly coveted. And that culmination of that work and being able to figure out how to communicate that effectively to a specific audience is something that is really important as you pursue your further studies. And so if that's something that you can speak to, it's going to really give you an advantage. Okay, we are going to jump now to kind of talking about the application. This is a question that I get from a lot of students, and part of why I wanted to be here today was to really, okay, so we've obviously made the case that research is valuable and important. Universities really value it. And you all have done amazing projects, some really innovative work that's really impressive. But now the challenge is, how do we convey this through the application process? And, it's not a simple one shape fits all, answer, but there are many places that you can tell your story. And I'm hoping that through today, I can give you some ideas and tips that can help you get on your way, and maybe open your eyes to some additional places that you can highlight some of the great work that you've done and really tell your story. So I have put on this slide here, we're going to move to the next slide. Excuse me. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I got off track. Okay. The areas that you can highlight your research in your college application. So one area is the activities section, that activities grid that is a part of the common application where you are highlighting 10 different meaningful extracurricular activities that you've been involved in your high school years. I'm going to talk about each of these sections in detail, but I'm just going to quickly go over what each of them are. The other area is really your main essay for the Common App, which is going to be applicable for almost all of the universities you apply to. And for those few that do not take the Common App, they still are going to have a main essay requirement. This is a great place to really tell your story. And if your story, the story that you want to tell involves your research project, you have a lot of space here to do that, and it can be a really great way to kick off that narrative. Supplemental essays in addition, right? I imagine the vast majority of the universities that you're applying to, especially top schools, they are requiring supplemental essays that are very custom and unique to the school. A lot of the questions, and we'll go through a couple of the prompts, provide really good avenues and are really, I think, targeted towards this type of intellectual inquiry and a great place to talk about your research. The additional information section. There's a lot of bandwidth to include additional things that you feel like you haven't had adequate space to tell in your activity grid, in your essays, etc. So there's opportunities there. Interviews are a great place, when you're talking to someone one-on-one to share what's special about your candidacy. And I think your research project is likely something that will come up and a great way to tell that story. And lastly, recommendation letters as well. So we're going to dive into each of these sections a little bit more. So first and foremost, let's talk about this activity section. As I mentioned, there's an opportunity to share 10 different activities. Some students submit an additional resume, but really, I would focus on the space for the 10 activities. That is really a place that is highlighted and is important to tell your story in a lot of ways, kind of can show your brand as well. Just some tips that I have, first of all, people are like, how can I list or label my research, right? There's no rule about how you have to do this. There's a few different ideas, and I think it really depends on what kind of research you did and what kind of story you want to tell. So first of all, you can list the Inspirit AI program that you're a participant and use that as the entry point. And you have 3 lines there to kind of talk about what specifically your involvement was, what your research was, what your mentorship was, what you accomplished. Another way that I have seen students do this is they, on the activity grid, they label independent research as the title, right? And then they use those 3 sentences to really describe what that independent research was. If you happen to get a publication out of your research, you're now a published author, that could be a title that you could label in the activity grid that you're a published author. And in that description, you can kind of describe your research through that avenue. If you have done your research connected with a larger organization as a part of an internship, as a part of a nonprofit, as a part of some type of collaborative initiative, that could be the label that you are listing as the activity, and then the research you're kind of describing in the 3 sentences that are allowed. Lastly, you could kind of list it as your mentorship. So if you worked as a mentor to some specific scholar, if you worked in a specific lab, that could be the title that you give for the activity. There's lots of different options. Really, I think what you want to choose is what will allow you to most effectively portray what was special about what you did, and clearly articulate and help someone who doesn't really know exactly the ins and outs of your research understand kind of what the key elements were. So before we get into the essays, I just wanted to give some kind of high-level tips about what to be thinking about. And so so first of all, I think this is a helpful reminder that when you're writing your college essays and putting together your applications, you are not retelling your research paper. You're not summarizing your research accomplishments. You are not writing an abstract. The point of these essays are to tell a university admissions committee more about who you are and what's special about yourself, right? And so I do not recommend just, writing your essay similar to how you might have written a research project. But if this research is really a part of your story and you're answering a prompt that it's really relevant, then I think it's a great thing to talk about. But remember, really, the focus is you. The focus is not the research. It's about what you learned, what you got out of it, what you learned about yourself, what you have contributed or added. It's not about the research per se. So just some tips. So contextualize your project. Keep in mind that the people that are reading your applications, former admissions officers, kind of like how I was when I was in my role at Harvard. I don't have all of the specific subject matter knowledge that you may have in your field, right? But what's important is for you to help me understand things quickly and clearly about what it is you did, why you chose it, why it was important, why it's particularly meaningful, right? So the more context you can provide, right? Help me understand why this is a problem that you chose to address. If you have specific information to kind of in a sentence or two, just help me understand kind of the scope of things or why this is so relevant. It's going to go a long way to helping me as a reader or someone that's reading your application form a connection. Another tip is to really discuss the meaningful impact. So that can be the meaningful impact that you have had on the field, future impact that you hope to have on a community, something that you've exposed. But if you've really made an impact, it's important to demonstrate that because it's not going to be clear unless you spell that out. Another thing, and these are not things that I think have to be included. They're just tips to give you ideas. But you could talk about what you learned about the research process, right? And I'll get into a little bit more detail about this in a bit. But you don't necessarily have to talk about the specifics of your actual research discoveries. What might be most interesting is actually the process that you went through and what you learned. That's something that can be relatable to anyone who's reading your application and would be really relevant to future research and your future work that you might do. Another thing that you could talk about is challenges. We'll talk about this a little bit more with one of the prompts, but I know a lot of students that I talk to oftentimes feel like they need to only present the positives and everything, tell this story that everything went perfectly. The reality is all researchers have challenges and face challenges. And by talking about that, it's going to show a level of humility, and it's also going to really make, if you have a story to tell, I think it's going to really feel authentic and genuine. Additionally, talking about how motivated you may be from your research to do further research or continue down a path in another way, I think is another thing that could be really interesting to talk about and can really resonate well with readers. Okay, let's jump into each of these sections a little bit more. So I have one of the prompts. We're going to go through a few prompts that are from the Common App main essay. And for those of you who may have already seen, the Common App is planning to use the same essay prompts from last year. So we now know that these are the same questions that you're going to have. There are multiple questions and you have the freedom to choose. And there's also one that is option. You can choose a question of your choice. So if you feel like your research, the story that you want to tell doesn't necessarily fit into any of these prompts, that is completely fine. But I wanted to pull a few prompts that I thought, particularly as I was preparing for this presentation, really resonated with this idea of how to incorporate your research. So this first question here is, describe a topic, idea, or concept that you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? So I love this question because it really gets to this idea of there being something in this knowledge universe that's so engaging that you are super excited about. And for many of you, when I've spoken with students that have done independent research, that's what led them to want to do independent research. They were super curious about something, and the only thing that they had read all the books and seen all the TED Talks on it, and the only thing that they could really think about how to engage further is to do some further research and explore something new. That is so aligned with kind of a lot of that emphasis on research and scholarly work that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, and you can really see that fitting nicely into this question. So if that's something that resonates with you, I think that's a great thing to talk about. I pulled just a couple examples of Inspirit AI projects, and I know Michelle's going to talk about some additional projects at the end of our presentation, but I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple from the past that I think could be really interesting. Like, if this was your work, something real, an interesting way to incorporate into this question. So we have a student here at Inspirit who was looking at supercell thunderstorm forecasting. The problem that they identified was that supercell thunderstorms have long evaded forecasters. And as a result, there's inadequate warning time. And if they could get a better model, a better system, they might be able to prevent deaths. And the project that this student did was to see if there could be a machine learning and generative network that could be used to create a new learning model to make improvements in this forecast accuracy and lead time, and ultimately save lives. And so what I like about this project is it's very meaningful to the individual and addresses, a problem that I think all of us can relate to, right? Unpredictable weather that can have drastic effects and potentially, lead to people losing homes and potentially lead to people losing lives. And, this student dove into this deeper from a research perspective and found a way to make a contribution to something that can help society at large. And so if this was a project, if I was advising the student, I'm like, hey, this is a great topic that you can explore. It really shows you there's an opportunity to both show about why you cared about this, what you did with it, what more you can do with it. But additionally, talk about through that process, some of the accomplishments that you did through your scholarly research. And I think that's what's so nice about incorporating projects that you've done independently, because oftentimes they answer the question so effectively, right? Because they're really getting to that why, but they're also allowing you to showcase through the why what you did and what's special about it. And I think those really make the best stories. If you do decide to answer this question, make sure that you are answering all components of it, right? So answering this other part about why does it captivate you? And also what or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? It very well could be that you tell an anecdote about how you turned to independent research as an avenue to learn more when you wanted to learn more, right? And this is something you've continued to do and will continue to do. One more quick project I wanted to talk about that I thought was really interesting, kind of looks at things from another perspective, but also a great story to tell, and I think a good opportunity to answer this question. So another Inspirit AI student was really interested in US Census data, which is, so relevant for so many fields, from political science to statistics to history. And, this student was really wondering how they could make some of the data collection better and create a tool that's more effective. And there's lots of holes in US Census data collection. And they did a research project to explore the viability of using predictive models to quantify the extent that the role that language plays in undercounts in data collection through the census. They used a multivariable regression model to study this. I think this project also would be a really interesting way to answer this question, right? To talk about why you were so driven and drawn to do work looking at the US Census data, talking about why it captivated you, talking about why and how you decided to engage with it and, address a problem that is affecting society. And what I also like about this particular topic is it's interdisciplinary. It can bring in multiple academic areas and interests and be applicable to multiple departments and areas. And so I think it's an opportunity to show that you have a variety of different interests. So, I'm not going to have a chance to get into like specifics of the actual essay, but I wanted to bring up just some examples of how you all can use your projects to highlight, the work that you've done, but really at its core, tell that story. It's not so much about what you uncovered, but it's about what drove you to it. It's about what you learned from it. And really, it's about demonstrating kind of how you are thirsty and interested in knowledge that, independent research is something that you were drawn to and might be something that you're interested in pursuing more in the future as well. I think I already went over most of the tips that I wanted to share, but just another reminder, you're not re-summarizing or representing your data. I've seen too many essays where students are doing that. I think it's helpful to describe what you're doing, include maybe a couple things that really show that you have knowledge about this, but really it's more about the story and the person behind it. If a reader is interested in understanding the specifics of your project, right, they can read your abstract or paper, which we'll talk about places to put that in your application. But really in your essay, you want to tell a story about why this topic was so engaging for yourself. Why was it so fascinating? Could also talk about what surprised you. I think that's always really interesting. And then talking about like what else you could do if you wanted to explore this more. And maybe some of you already are exploring this more. And maybe that might be one of your motivations for wanting to attend a top university is to have an opportunity to dive into this deeper. I'm going to just quickly share a couple other common app main essay prompts that I thought were interesting. I'm not going to go into the level of detail with examples, but here's another great question here. So the question is, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you? And what did you learn from the experience? So as I mentioned earlier, I think that talking about challenges that you might have experienced in your research and your research process could be a really interesting essay here. And, for a variety of reasons, as I said, all researchers experience setbacks, right? So nothing to be ashamed there. And by showing, that's part of this learning experience, right? This is how scientists, this is how scholars learn more. They take risks and they push into uncharted territory. And it's very common in that setting to have things not go as planned, right? And that can be some of the best learning experiences. So I think if you had an experience like that with your independent research, I think it could be a really interesting story to tell that can both allow you to talk a little bit about what you did, but also really show that humility, that commitment to knowledge and pushing forward, that commitment to taking initiative. There's a lot about the actual research process that I think in many ways is more valuable than the final outcome, at least for students, that I think are at your level. And so if that is something that you think you have a story to tell, I think this is a great question to answer. You can talk about how you might have dealt with this setback and how you might have overcome it, come back stronger. If you weren't able to overcome it, can you talk about what you learned about yourself and how you want to apply things differently next time, right? These are all really valuable lessons, and I think a great way to answer this question. And one more main essay prompt. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. So your research, your independent research might not fit into this question. You might not feel like your personal story resonates with this question, but I do know that for some students, their independent research was definitely a spark for them. It was an opportunity for them to experience a tremendous amount of personal growth, academic growth, intellectual growth, especially if you're working with a mentor, right? Like getting that opportunity to talk through some of these concepts. So this question, I think, is really getting to what you learned about yourself, what motivated you, and how you might have got a new understanding of yourself or others. The focus is by no means, what the research was, but once again, I really think it's the process. And so I think with these 3 prompts that I have chosen, they are good avenues to talk about your research, but talk about your research in a way that I think is relatable and, quite frankly, shows the best part of yourselves, right? Shows kind of the most relevant things that I think are relevant to admissions committees. Yes, what you accomplished and what you researched is important, and that is going to be told through your research paper, through your participation in the program. But when you're talking about these essays, it's a missed opportunity, I think, if you're not really talking about the growth, about using this as a lens for someone to understand who you are as a person, as a student, and using research as that lens. What I like about research, not only is it incredibly challenging as independent, it's also incredibly unique, right? All of you are doing unique topics, projects, concepts, and so if you were to write about any of these things, the likelihood is that you are going to be the only person or one of only a few people that are kind of talking about this particular niche. If you were to pick a generic activity, right, like being class president or leader of a club, and don't get me wrong, these are all great things to talk about and are good stories to tell, but it's very likely that a lot of those similar activities are going to be repeated by other students. But what I like about independent research is there's an opportunity to talk about something that's incredibly unique to you as a person and tell your story through that way. Okay, we are going to move on to some of the supplemental essays. So I pulled just a couple examples. This is from this past year's Harvard application, and this is just 2 of the supplements. It's not all of the supplements. As you all know, Harvard has not released their supplement essay prompts for this upcoming year. Those should probably be coming in August. I imagine that they're going to be very similar, if not identical, but obviously we need to wait and see. But I still think that it is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about how you can talk about your research through your supplements. I should have said this before, but with all these examples, you don't need to talk about your research in all of them, right? I think you want to be strategic about it if you have a lot of other parts of your application and your story to tell. So you really want to be strategic about when and how you do that. But at the end of the day, there's a few different opportunities. And I think with something as meaningful as your independent research, you're probably going to want to do it in a couple places. So first prompt here, briefly describe an intellectual experience that was important to you, right? This, I think it's obvious, the work that you likely have done is an intellectual experience. And if it was important to you, this is a great place to talk about it. You have 200 words to really highlight what was particularly important to you. You can express what the research was, but the bulk of this question is really going to be about why it was important to you, why it was meaningful, potentially why it has changed your perspective, or how it's informed you or made you the student that you feel like you are today, which might feel different from when you first started the experience. Another place that I think your independent research project can be used to address these supplement questions is this prompt here, which is briefly describe any of your extracurricular activities, employment experience, travel, or family responsibilities that have shaped who you are. So if you have a story here about your independent research and the process, the experience really shaping who you are as a person, that's exactly what this question is asking for, and I think it's a great opportunity to tell the story here. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving through the different sections, and happy to answer specific questions at the end. But let's talk about the additional information section. So on the Common App, you're going to see that there is a space that you can add additional information. This is not a requirement, but it's really an opportunity to add to your story, to tell additional information that might not have fit into the other parts of your application, right? As I said, that activity grid, there's a limit on the words and the structure, right? The nice thing about the additional information section is it's unstructured in a way. And so you actually have a little bit of opportunity to talk about things differently. You don't want to go overboard, right? You're not writing an essay in here, but I think that there is an opportunity if you feel like you want to highlight your research and the specifics of it, to give a short blurb or abstract about what you did and what your research was. Anything, that I think you haven't been able to include before, right? If there was something, a publication, if there was something that, a discovery or a unique innovation, I think that there's an opportunity here. You can also include a link to your publication in this space. You're not going to be able to fit your whole paper, but you could upload your paper, as an additional attachment to your application. But I think the nice thing about having, even if you do both, I think having a link to your publication here is it's really accessible to the reader. There's no guarantees that it's going to be opened, right? But I think that it's a nice gesture to give that opportunity, and it likely could. And especially if it's, associated with a journal or some type of online publication or research hub that you really want to showcase, having that link shows kind of how legitimate it is, and I think is a nice opportunity there. I think that this is another place to really clarify what your contribution or your role was, if you feel like you haven't had a chance to do that through your essay or through the activity section as well. But I think the additional information place is a nice place to give a little more detail about your research. But you're really wanting to make it concise and easy for someone to view and understand, particularly if there's something that kind of ended up becoming relevant, like from a societal perspective. So you're addressing you suggested a solution that is now addressing something that is now in the community. If that got picked up in a newspaper article, on a publication, in your school paper, anything like that, I think the more color and context you can give, I think really can add nicely. These are not requirements, but opportunities to kind of different places you can tell your story and add some of that color. You've all done the hard work of doing this difficult research, but don't sell yourself short, right? By not effectively portraying what was so special about it, right? We want you to understand that. Interviews is the next area I wanted to touch on briefly. So I know that not all of you are applying to schools that offer them, right? So this would only be relevant for those universities that do have interviews, and they're primarily going to be alumni interviews. And what I like about interviews is that, you're talking to someone one-on-one, whether that is in person or over Zoom, but you have a chance to really showcase what your passion is. And if you're choosing, if your independent research and what you learned and uncovered really is your passion, and that's the passion or one of the passions that you're wanting to convey in your application, an interview is a great place to really do that, because it's going to give the interviewer an opportunity to really feel that excitement and that passion, and hopefully talk about it in their write-up, which gets shared with admissions committees. Just some tips that I want you all to think about. So, very likely, just as I said, the admissions readers likely are not experts in your specific domain. in all likelihood, the person that you are meeting with and who's interviewing you is also not an expert. They might be a non-scientist. They might be a former scientist, but very removed from this space. So, you really want to talk about your research in a way that, someone who's not familiar with the specifics can understand. And I often tell students to kind of practice their elevator pitch on this, right? Talk to a friend, talk to a family member who knows nothing about your research, and just practice like in 1 or 2 minutes. Can you explain what it was, why you did, and why it should be interesting, right? It's not easy, and it's not something that I think comes naturally, but with practice, I think you can really kind of own in on what your main story is, and I think that can go really a far way in interviews. Another tip is really to try to connect. If there are any larger themes that you wrote about in your application or you want to be seen in your application, right? So some of those themes from the essay about, thirst for knowledge, or maybe you're particularly, as the student that I had highlighted, really interested in things related to weather forecast, right? Maybe that extends to climate change. If that's a theme that you have talked about in your application, you want to be considered, the more that you can reiterate that theme and that passion in your interview and have that be understood and hopefully, become a part of your write-up. You're not able to control that, but the more, you do have the power to kind of control which stories and narratives you tell. And so I think it's a great opportunity to really focus on that. And the next section we're going to talk about are recommendation letters. So yes, you all likely are going to be having 2 recommendation letters from teachers at your school and 1 recommendation letter from your guidance counselor at your school. There are opportunities to submit additional recommendation letters at most of the schools that you're going to be applying to and are interested in. I believe firmly that I think research mentors can be really strong third recommendation letters. You don't have to use your research mentor, right? Like you could definitely, if there's another internship, experience, extracurricular activity, right? Someone that supervised you for a job or a club, those can all be in lieu of this. But if you are wanting to present as your research being something that is a critical component of your story, I think it would make sense for one of those recommendation letters to come from either your mentor or someone who's connected to that research in a certain way. Keep in mind, research letters are not mandatory. Also, I know that it's not a guarantee either. So not all mentors are able to provide recommendation letters. And so if that's the case, that is totally acceptable. It's not gonna be held against you, right? It's just if you did form a good connection with your mentor and they have agreed to write a recommendation letter for you, I think it's another way to really hit home some strong aspects of your candidacy. If you do go this route, just be really gracious and respectful of your mentor's time, because this is something that they're doing extra for you. But I think what you can do if they are writing a letter for you is to kind of help them understand specifically how the research experience has impacted you and why it's been so meaningful and why perhaps it shows that you're such an applicant who has the potential for growth and is a good fit for further education and inquiry. I don't think there's no perfect way to do this, but I don't think that your mentor needs to necessarily highlight all of the research that you did, but really I think it's the stories about you as a student, as a researcher, and what you accomplished and learned and how you grew. I think those are some of the things that can be most relevant in a recommendation letter. So that kind of sums up kind of the fifth part of application of kind of places that I think are really good to talk about these things, right? There are other places that you might be able to fit it in, but I think these really hit to the main themes. I know a lot of you likely have a variety of different experiences, a very robust resume that you are kind of deciding and weighing what to focus on. And, I can't tell you just right now what you should and shouldn't focus on, right? That's ultimately a decision that is based off of your own story and the narratives that you're presenting and the different accomplishments and focuses that you have. But I will say that I think research, the work that you all have done, could be really good stories to tell. And if you feel like it is a story that is going to add to your application and show a lot of color and depth, I think that any of these spaces that I talked about are good ways to do that. You don't need to do them in all. I actually would not recommend having it be in all aspects, right? Because there's hopefully other things you want to talk about, but I think there's a lot of opportunities there. My last slide here, and then we're going to open things up to additional to Q&A, but I just wanted to share my contact information. So I am an independent college counselor. I work with high school students who are planning or in the process of applying to universities. And so if you want to check out my website or email me if you have specific questions or there's things that I might be able to help you in the process, please feel free to reach out. I like connecting with students. So let me close my, I'm gonna stop sharing and then I'm gonna open up the chat box and see if anyone has questions they want to put in. And then additionally, I'm gonna give Michelle the floor too, because she wants to share some insights and things that are relevant about some projects that have already taken place as well. So, okay, lots of questions here, and I will try to do my best. And Michelle, feel free to chime in if there's anything you want to add color on. So someone is asking, is there no other way except research to showcase the project? So I'm not quite sure what you're getting to, but I'm assuming so there's no requirement that you talk about your experience through Inspirit AI or your independent research, right? If that's ultimately you decide that that's not a part of the story that you want to present, right? You have full freedom in your application to do that. But specifically, I think that you don't necessarily need to showcase your entire project, but I think that showing that you did do independent research in the activity grid is going to be a really good place to start. Someone else is asking how to show it as mentorship and part of a group or organization. So yeah, the activity grid is a little bit vague, and I understand that I get that from a lot of students. And so just use that, keep that in mind. There's no right way to do these things. I brought that idea up because I've seen some students list, that their activity, like they're describing it as a mentorship with so-and-so scholar, right? Or so that, that could be the name of the activity, and you go deeper into that through the description, right? Or if you were a part of an organization or a group, so, there's some people that do research as a part of a nonprofit, right? You could list that nonprofit, that's the activity that you're a part of, and then your description there is really where you go into more detail explaining what you did. Someone is asking, how do we specifically stand out from other applicants because there are so many researchers? Yeah, I mean, this is part of the art of putting together, I think a really high quality application. And so I think a lot of it, I think one way to really stand out is to really tell your story effectively and have a story behind it, right? This is very different than if you are submitting your research or your abstract for a science journal, right? For a science journal, the committee that's reviewing that, they're trying to figure out what's the most accomplished science that we're reviewing here, right? Or what science here fits into our scope the best. That is not what your college application is. Your college application is opportunity to show another side of yourself for this holistic admissions process, right? You already have your transcript, you have your grades, right? But that doesn't tell the whole story. Just listing your resume, that also doesn't tell the whole story. You have an opportunity here to tell the human side of yourself, right? And I think that's really the way to stand out. And hopefully some of the strategies that I talked about earlier can give you some insights into that. So another question is, how does one mention independent research in an elevator pitch? How do you craft a good elevator pitch? So this is part of what I was talking about just as far as practice goes, right? Because a good elevator pitch is one that someone that you're talking to can easily understand why what you did was meaningful, important, and impactful, and walks away with that impression, right? You don't want someone to walk away when you're describing your research as saying, oh, I have no idea what you just talked about, right? That would not be a successful elevator pitch, right? So I don't have an answer about, how does one craft a good one? The way you do that is you practice with a few different people, right? And really see what resonates about are you able to describe your research in a way where they walk away and are ideally saying, oh, wow, at a base level, like that sounds really interesting. That's really cool that you did that. But on another level, hopefully they say, oh, I'm kind of interested to know more about that, right? I think that if you've done a good elevator pitch, you've accomplished those goals. There's a lot of questions here, so just bear with me. So someone's asking that we could make our contributions or role clear in the additional information part. And what did I mean by that? So what I was talking about was, when I hear that a student has done, an independent research project or worked with a mentor, right? A PhD student, a professor, a scholar of some kind. Like there is a whole mixed bag of what that actually means, right? And so that's why I'm saying if it's beneficial to talk about what your contribution or your role was, if that's something that was impressive and is going to add to the story, I think it would be great to spell that out, right? So if you worked hand in hand with your mentor, right? Or you actually sourced data yourself, or you built a model yourself and then reviewed it and with guidance from your mentor, right? Those are all extra details that I think are helpful, that can add more color and help someone who's not familiar with, hasn't read your whole research paper, kind of understand what specifically you did. Okay, let me pull up, let's see. So someone is asking as a general question, do you think that doing several summer programs make our apps stronger and more impressive? So I don't, the difficult answer is it depends, right? But in general, like it's hopefully the theme that you have been able to see from the things that I've talked about is I think what's most important is what you took away from an experience and what you learned from an experience. And I think that that can be taken or demonstrated from one summer experience, or that can be demonstrated or taken from more than one. But really, I think that the challenge is kind of explaining the growth and the impact that it has. It's not just about kind of listing the things or quantity or the number of things that you've done. It's really about, I think, the depth of it, or what you've gotten out of it. Yeah, so someone's asking a good question. What if we don't publish a paper? Can we still reference the AI project? So yeah, absolutely. You need to be honest about, what you did, and if you didn't publish a paper, don't talk about that. But what is really the theme that I've been talking about much of today, right, is that just by doing an independent research project, right? I didn't say publishing a paper, I said doing and participating in independent research. That shows all those things that I talked about earlier, right? About critical thinking, initiative, independence, intellectual curiosity. You don't have to publish a paper to do all those things, right? So you can definitely still talk about the research that you did, even if you didn't publish a paper. I was just mentioning that if you did publish a paper and it's something that you want to call attention to, there's lots of places that you can make that be known. Someone's asking, would being able to publish research on a prestigious journal make our app stronger? So I mean, yeah, obviously, yes, it's a very, very competitive admissions game, and the more that you can do to show that you have reached a level of excellency in something is always valuable. And it doesn't have to be in this research category, right? That can be related to your grades, related to your leadership experiences, etc. In academia, prestigious journals, high impact journals, like that is something that's very important for researchers and universities and faculty members and PIs. And so if you were able to, if that was an accomplishment that came of your research, I know that's really challenging at the high school level, but if it were, that would be something you would want to talk about. But by no means, if you did not do that, do I think that there's not still a lot of stories to tell, right? As I said, I think the biggest takeaways really from the research is what it shows about you and what it shows about your potential and what you can and will do in the future. And I think that's something that's really relevant. Okay, I'm just going to take a couple more questions and then I'm going to pass things over to Michelle. But yeah, someone is asking, if we did not publish a paper, can we still reference the project that we gave a presentation among 100 people? Does this hold some importance? So, there's no perfect answers here. I am just giving you my perspective, but this is what I was saying earlier about the more context you can give to explain what you did and why it's impressive, why it's relevant, the better. And so, yes, publication is one way to do that. But also, if you presented your paper to 100 different people, that is impressive. That demonstrates communication skills. That demonstrates kind of the full research cycle, right? Completion of that process. And those are all things that you can talk about and tell a story about. Okay, and someone is asking, is showcasing how you dedicated yourself to your research group, like attending in-person meetings at the university, worthy of highlight, or is talking too much about your accomplishments frowned upon? Also a challenging question. So, with everything, it's about how you do it, right? And so I think if the focus of your essay is just to brag about your accomplishments and what you did, I personally don't think that's the most effective or humbling story. But if you're talking about the process or what you learned, or what your contributions were, and that was just a part of it, and that those are things that you want to reference, I don't see those as brags. Those are a part of the story. So I think a lot of it is how you do it. I think you need to include some of those accomplishments. Otherwise, things feel very generic, and it is an opportunity to brag about yourself in a way through these applications. But you want to be really strategic about how you do that, because ultimately the goal of an essay or of these stories is not to brag. I think it's ultimately to show a side of you that you want other people to see, right? You're trying to show the full picture, and if those things help show the full picture, I think that's really valuable. Okay, I think this is probably a good time to transition over to Michelle, who's going to talk a little bit more. But thank you all. Still be online, but yeah, thank you all. And we'll transfer over to Michelle now.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks so much for that informative presentation. Your insights into the college admissions process and importance of showcasing research have been extremely valuable. So as we've heard today, participating in research, especially in a cutting-edge field like artificial intelligence, can significantly enhance your applications. And here at Inspirit, we're dedicated to providing students with these type of opportunities. And so I want to invite all of you now. I will share my screen to look at some of the opportunities that we have available here at Inspirit. All right, so some of the summer research and AI opportunities we have here at Inspirit. We offer a one-on-one research program for high school students to work individually with an experienced research mentor. And so if you're looking to get into research, whether you're a beginner and have never coded before, or you're looking to get into something more advanced, a more advanced subject, we have an opportunity for you. In this one-to-one program, students will begin by extracting insights from large data sets. They'll then architect key questions, depending on what they want to do, their research focused around, and then they'll engineer machine learning models to answer them. So upon completion of the course, you guys would have completed an independent AI project, a research proposal, and a final research paper article. And I will show what some of those look like. So if you guys go to this link on your browser, you can actually search up subtopics that you might be interested in and get an idea of the opportunities we have available. But just at a quick glance, here are some that Inspirit alumni have done in the past. This first one was a deep solar project. A student created a CNN architecture for the detection of solar panels from low-resolution satellite imagery in developing countries. So going back to what Justin said, one of the best parts about participating in research for your college application is making it unique, and choosing something that you specifically are interested in. And here at Inspirit, you'll definitely have the opportunity to explore whatever hidden passion you might have. And yeah, I definitely recommend checking out that link. Our alumni at Inspirit have had a bunch of accomplishments in different science fairs. They've published their work in newsletters. Here are just two that I want to highlight. Kaylee Shu created a respiratory sound classification system using AI with Inspirit, and she actually won the Grand Prize 2023 San Diego Award for Broadcom. And another one of our Inspirit alumni, Aditya Mittal, was published in the Journal of Student Research for his prediction of early onset project related to blood mononuclear cells. A bit of information on the program dates for our one-on-one research program. Students can join a start date. We have 3 start dates that have a deadline of June 20th to apply. They are July 10th, August 10th, and September 10th, so all well before the November 1st deadline. Our AI plus X individual research projects offer 10 one-hour mentorship sessions. And once again, you'll be paired with an experienced research engineer. She'll help you one-on-one with getting that project done. And then we also offer an AI research fellowship. And that AI plus X represents whatever field you want to study. So for example, you might be interested in using AI for healthcare, and you could fill in the X there with healthcare and look at AI projects that are specifically tailored towards things related to medicine. There's also AI plus sales, how you can use artificial intelligence in the sales industry, really whatever you want to focus on. If you go to the link I showed on slide 2, you should be able to find a subtopic past project that's been done on it. A little bit more about the application details and where you can apply. You can apply at this link, independent-mentorship.paperform.co. Here's some background on what type of student you have to be, just in either a freshman to senior in high school. We do prefer programming experience in Python or another language, but you can start as a complete beginner. I know people who have done the one-on-one research program with Inspirit, having no coding experience, and they've learned throughout the process. Before you start with your mentor, there will be a comprehensive AI crash course to get you up to speed. So if you're at all worried about the coding ability going into it, you shouldn't be. We will make sure that you're where you need to be. And students with all interests are encouraged to apply. So you might be on this call not looking to major in CS, but you're interested, again, in medicine or want to be a doctor. And this course can still help you explore things in that field. Our short answer question, we do have one as part of the application process, and it's, what do you hope to explore in the one-on-one AI plus X research mentorship program? And it's 100 words in response to that question, and we'll evaluate them and let you know if you've been accepted into the program based off that and everything else you include on your app. And then I just want to close by giving an overview of college admissions. In 2021 and 2022, over 400 Inspirit AI scholars were accepted to undergraduate degrees at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, UC Berkeley, Oxford, and Cambridge. We're proud that over 150 of these alumni were accepted to Ivy League schools in the past 2 years. So just to give a snapshot, you guys can see in this image, at Princeton, we had 9 acceptances, Stanford, 17, Harvard, 9, University of Pennsylvania, 25, University of Cambridge, 2, UC Berkeley, 38. So Inspirit is developing a track record with these schools. And thank you guys so much for attending this webinar. With that, I will stop sharing my screen. And I just want to thank you all again for joining us today. If you have any further questions or would like any more information about our programs, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our email is info@inspiritai.com, and Justin's was also included in his slide. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming sessions and helping you achieve your academic and career goals. So I hope you guys all have a great rest of your afternoon, and thank you once again for being with us today. Bye, everyone.